Hey there, Substackers. What is going on? It's Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This is a situation. We need to be together. We need to hang out and just get a check-in, sanity check, share some stories. That's why we're here. We are in night 3, if you're following along with my video series on the beautiful mess called This Christmas, and it's about surviving, navigating the holidays when everything's turned to shit. And so that's what we're doing. Today is day 3, and day 3 is loss, loneliness, and the empty holiday table. We can talk about that stuff. We don't have to. You can bring any question, any thought, any pull, any grievance here. And so that's why we're here. So come on in. Welcome. Good to have you here. I'll let people get settled in. I was thinking a lot about the series like this, dealing with the stress of the holidays and realizing that most of the stress and most of our problem, as we said in night 1, the problem is people. We are flawed and failing human beings who are trying to exist and coexist with billions of other flawed and failing human beings. So there's going to be so much inherent mess in all that stuff. But I see Dimitri's here. Hey, Dimitri. Robin's joining us. Dan, Susan, great to have you all here. So thinking about this series and the problem being people, and we have 2 options. We can separate ourselves from those messy people, or we can engage with those messy people and be wise about the ways in which we engage. And neither answer is wrong, by the way. I'm a strong proponent in this season, as in every day right now. We need to do what we believe is best for our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, relational health. And that means making choices. And all of those choices can be justified. And so I just want to give you some encouragement. Adam Kirk is here. Hey, happy Wednesday to you, brother. The theme of today is interesting because it feels very small and close and personal, and it is. But it also directly connects to the political tribalism and the relational fractures that have been created because of it. So this season, the holidays in general, are a time when our culture says, be joyful, be perfect. We've talked about that. But it's also a time when it says, be together with the ones you love. And yet it's often the ones we love that we need the distance from, or we are being damaged by. And that's never been more true than in this time in the life of our nation, when people's beliefs, whether political, theological, are causing the rift. I sent a message to my former church today. My former church shared a statement on the immigration, on ICE coming to our state. And I felt as though the statement was carefully, beautifully worded, but really didn't say anything. It talked about needing to rely on God and trusting the goodness of God. And it talked about the enemy, that we need to not, meaning the devil in this case, the enemy spiritually. We can't give in to what the devil wants, which is division and hatred. But we know that right now, this is not about God or the devil or the enemy. This is not about overly spiritual, nebulous things, vague ideas. This is about a corrupt administration using a group of masked armed thugs to violently unlawfully assault migrants and Latino people. And so my question was, what are you actually stating that you're for or against? So I say that because when it comes to our church experiences, our friends, we're all facing this sense of, okay, are we going to stay on the surface and just be about ambiguity, or are we going to really declare who we are? That's kind of an aside, but really it's not, because the theme of today's session was and is the season that asks us to be together, but then the emptiness and the loneliness and the attrition that we feel And so I was thinking a lot about that sense of loneliness, and we can often, loneliness is sometimes about physical isolation, but it often can be something that we experience in groups. We can be surrounded by people and feel incredibly lonely, and we can be in a church or we feel misaligned with. We can be in a family where we feel like no one actually truly sees us. And we can be in a social gathering where we feel like, as we talked about on day two or day one, that we're going to do the ceasefire approach. We're going to stay on the surface. But there's a cost to that. So this loneliness is really something I think most people are feeling in a way, shape, or form. And I'd love to have you share in the comments, where is that loneliness, that isolation, that separation, whether it's geographic or emotional, where are you feeling that? Or where are you sensing the absence the most right now? Where is that most acutely being, showing up for you? Um, I see in the comments there looks like let me just pull this up. LBW is talking about, she says they say Julia, sorry. At the food pantry where I work, a social worker from the school district called to get help for 7 kids whose parents were taken by ICE. It makes me sick. Okay, so I somehow missed some scrolling here. LBW, I want to get back to you because I see people. Um, you started a conversation here. I want to honor that. I'm sorry if I missed that. Tough day. One of the students at my tiny early college high school where I teach had their father picked up by ICE, and now their family is without an income. LBW, just so sorry. I see people are responding, and today it was a day that for me, I felt that fresh sense of rage, and I thought I was all out of rage. I kind of thought I've exhausted myself. I'm just in a state of sort of numbness, but for better or for worse, I was reminded that I'm still capable of that holy ferocity that I talk about. And this is why what I was saying earlier about this church statement, I think for all of us right now, people of faith, morality, and conscience have to show up as clearly and specifically as we can and let there be no doubt about the things that we stand for, and even at the cost of our relationships. So that loneliness for me, that isolation is often going to show up because I declare unequivocally what my life is about and the kinds of people I want to be surrounded by. So there is a shifting that I think is happening. So sorry, LBW, and I can't imagine the stress that um, this is causing not only you, but just millions of people. And here's the thing, it's just such a waste, isn't it? That this is all unnecessary, that we are experiencing this trauma from ICE specifically because the agenda is to give raw meat to people who lack critical thinking and just want to see people rounded up and arrested. That's what pisses me off the most, that I can see through this, and I think most decent people can, and why more people can't. I just was talking, I'm walking here on a path here on our greenway, and it's adjacent to a retirement, a 55 and over community, and talking to this woman there, and she said, there are so many people in this development who support everything that they're doing with ICE. And she said one woman even said to me, "Yeah, I think the lawn workers here should all be vetted because one of them looked at me." And she was very skeptical because this man looked at her. And my friend said, "This is the kind of crap we used to do to black people in the 50s and 60s, create a crime out of being human." And I was glad that she said what she did, but that needs to happen more and more. I want to jump down in the chat here. Joel said, a dear friend used to host a fabulous Friendsgiving. It isn't taking place this year. Fallout. Um, I lost you here. I'm so sorry. I'm going to get there. So much. Okay, there we go. Our once close-knit group is now fractured into splinters. I trust this is on topic. Joel, everything's on topic because this is about being human, and, my writing is about that, the series is about that, and yeah, for sure. The Friendsgiving thing, um, that's not taking place, those kinds of things, and we just had to cancel an event at one of our local churches that was a dinner, a Thanksgiving dinner for, vulnerable, at-risk people because so many of the people who would normally partake of that are Latino or brown-skinned, and so now safety is not allowing that to happen, and they're too afraid to show up. And so that's the other thing. I mean, we cannot allow this. It's just simply not acceptable as a civilized society. So, and it is creating all those splinters, and that really reminds me, Joel, one of the parts of the message today in the video was that we have these relational fractures, we have this emotional distance, and often we tell ourselves a story that, okay, we're separated from our Trump supporting friends or family members, and we're miserable, we're sad, we're grieving, but they're off just living life and feeling great. And that's almost never true. I talk in the video about reciprocal loss, that everyone is feeling the damage and the fracture. They just have a different story about why it exists, and loneliness is so powerful of a presence. I mean, that's part of the reason that MAGA exists anyway, that, for whatever reason, tens of millions of people felt lonely and unseen, and this man and his movement gave them enough, lip service to believe that they were seen and represented. And so that desire to be known, that desire for community, that is at the core of all of the stuff that we're talking about tonight, that helped pull them into something, to a movement that is even predatory toward them. And it's just such a waste. Debbie says, my righteous anger has separated and isolated from church friends. Yeah, Debbie. I mean, for me, I could lose if I lose people because I protest the illegal and violent abduction, harassment of human beings because of the color of their skin. I'm gonna be okay if I lose those people, whoever they are, and however long I've known them, and whatever past we have. And see, here's one of the keys about loneliness and the desire for community I was just talking about with Trump supporters. It works in us too. And often we want to keep relationships with people because we honor the history we've had with them. We love and respect them. But sometimes we're clinging to the nostalgia of the version of them that used to be, and we're not thinking about the version of them that exists. And we're not really reckoning with the reality of all of the stuff that we see out in the world that grieves us, they are partly responsible for. And that's where I am at this point. I'm going to make I'm going to find a new tribe. I'm going to recreate my social circle around some just givens, right? People deserve to marry the person they love. The color of someone's skin should not declare, or their nation of origin, or their, native language should not decide whether they get to experience the fullness of America and of life and of freedom. And women should be able to decide what happens to their bodies. All of these things, if I have to lose every person that I grew up with, which I don't, thankfully, I've got so many great people. So anyway, that's a little something there. LBW, channeling rage into productivity and organization to help those who remain. LBW, perfect. Yeah, I mean that's what today, the last 2 days with ICE arriving here in North Carolina, especially locally in Raleigh yesterday, we are moving into organizing, problem solving, being strategic on two fronts. One is opposing the ugliness, you know, videotaping ICE, demanding that they follow the law as best we can, but also caregiving and helping our immigrant, our Latino neighbors avoid ICE directly, help them get out of the path of it, but creating systems for them to have safety and food or whatever they might need right now. So that's the only option, is making sure that we are not, that we don't create chaos in ourselves. Noreen says community is being lost. Trump has huge parties at Mar-a-Lago. Those people have no sense of love and caring. Now we are the ones being split off. Narcissistic energy. Amen to that, Noreen. And again, we simply have to redefine what our chosen communities are going to be, what our chosen families will be. Um, and it's one of the things on the series on the video. If you have time and you want to watch them, great. If you don't, it's totally cool. But I'm offering these as sort of a resource that you can use whenever. Um, this loneliness, this loss, this grieving, the attrition, the isolation, all of this. One of the antidotes is story exchange, and that when we can share our story with other people, when we can acknowledge exactly how we're feeling, that tends to heal us. And so I've been trying to encourage people to find ways to connect with others and to share stories. And whether that might be, some strategies for today that I shared were a three-name check-in. So you find three people who you haven't talked to in a while, or people care deeply about the world, and you just take a minute every day. Maybe you pick three people a day, and you just check in with them, ask them, how they're doing, what they're feeling, if you can encourage them in any way. Maybe you don't know a lot of people, so maybe after a couple days you might exhaust that three-person suggestion. Maybe it's the same three people. Maybe you do that. Um, or do a story exchange. We have gift exchanges all the time at this time of year. Maybe create a story exchange, create an event or some online time or a Zoom where people can come and say, okay, here's my story. And you just listen and you allow people to process those stories. Um, and then something I suggested for individuals, but I think I'm going to try to do this online, is a not okay holiday party, and let people come bearing a gift. And the gift is the freedom to say, I'm John and I'm not okay. And this is why I'm not okay right now. Whether it's a sickness in the family, whether it's a financial struggle, whether it's the state of the world, whether it's someone that they've recently lost who's passed away, something like that. What if we could just come and say, yeah, this is a not okay holiday party? I think there's value in something like that when we can just go. And here's the great thing: I bet if we show up to tell a group of like-hearted human beings that we're not okay, we'll probably be more okay than had we not shown up. So that might be worth doing. Marianne says, I love that idea. I do too, Marianne. We're going to make that happen for sure. Kay Fitzgerald says, owning our feelings. Kay, one of the hardest things to deal with during the holidays, but really anytime, is the pretending that we are pressured to engage in. Pretend, our marriages are perfect, or pretend that we're, more financially secure than we are, or whatever it could be. Or just pretending that we're happy when we are inside are carrying a lot. And I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm done pretending. In fact, you guys, readers, followers, you'll know there are days when I just, the other day I wrote about crashing out, and I feel, no hesitation in that, no guilt about that, because I want to normalize um, responding authentically. Timothy says, this is why Christmas has been my least favorite holiday. So many pressures. Amen, Timothy. And while these pressures are real, we can respond differently to them. Um, I was talking to a good friend, and she deals with depression year round. And I said to her, she said, I feel pressure. I feel like I'm not getting it right. And I feel like I'm not keeping up. And I feel like these, list of things came out. And I said to her, "Here's the secret, though. No one is expecting these things from you but you." Very few people, I mean, sometimes we have parents or siblings or spouses or partners or friends who are saying, "Hey, you're not this, you're not that, you should be this, you should be that." But for the most part, all of this pressure is pressure that we choose to accept. And maybe the most radical thing we can do is to say, "Hey, I'm going to relieve myself of the pressure that I'm putting on myself." Uh, it won't make the existential realities change, it won't make the constitutional crises go away, but it might give us a little bit more agency in the middle of it. Dan says, "The not okay party, is that with like minded folks or anyone?" Super question, Dan. Here's my experience. When I create venues of any kind, whether I go and speak or I do something online, or in the community, there's a large segment of people who will not show up in the spirit of what that gathering is. So, of course, someone could say, "Hey," they could show up and say, "I'm not okay because I'm afraid of illegal immigrants coming into the country," if that's kind of what the point you're getting at. But I wrote a book called The Bigger Table, and I think we've actually talked about this before online on one of these gatherings. The bigger table is the idea that people could come to a gathering and everyone would be seen and heard and respected. Everyone would be valued as a fully complex human being worthy of honor and respect. However, asking, for example, the example I use is a transgender teenager and a 65-year-old Southern Baptist white guy to that table, it's a much greater ask of the teenager than the 65-year-old man, because the 65-year-old man is questioning the moral worth of the person across from him. And so that transgender teenager is a much greater ask because that person's humanity is in question. But I said, if you could come to the gathering and say, "I'm going to honor the humanity of the transgender person enough to hear their story," that's what the bigger table would and should be. And so the not okay party would be open to anyone. And so I'm gonna open it to everyone. So, for example, if I do this, which is I feel like now I am, because I've spoken it into existence, um, everyone could come and say why they're not okay. And really, that speaks to Dan to what I was just saying about the reciprocal grief. I had someone come to me years ago. I've often shared this story. She said, "I'm a Fox News orphan. My whole family is disconnected from me because they've watched this network that has slowly made my compassion for people, something they raised me to have, that's been a deal breaker for them. My stance on immigration or LGBTQ rights." And I told her, which I referred to the other day, that her family is grieving that loss too. They just have a different story. So if I had a not okay holiday gathering, this woman could show up and so could her family, and they could both expose loss that they're feeling. If they could do that without, dehumanizing each other, that's that would be the point. Deborah, low-income children stay home for the holidays where they may or may not get gifts and food. School is that safe place for them, so yes, they don't enjoy Christmas. Pressure on kids that are already struggling for basic needs. Saw this firsthand in an inner city school I worked at. Heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking, Deborah. However, again, when we focus on the heartbreak, that's the first step. But we have to move from heartbreak to how can I be an agent of healing and joy? So that might mean looking for creative ways to make sure that Latino, immigrant, vulnerable populations, people living in food scarcity, have every opportunity to have the simple joys that everyone else has. And so whether that's creating special holiday parties, whether it's working underground to make sure local neighbors are being cared for, this is part of it too. Um, if you've been reading my writing for any amount of time, you know that I believe in sort of this two lane, if you will, way of dealing with injustice. One is an offensive posture that fights legislation that opposes political parties or candidates or politicians who do unlawful, violent things. So that's the battle posture. But then there's also the open handed part of it, the caregiving and the compassionate, and making sure that I'm expressing my values in a way that keeps vulnerable, oppressed, marginalized people, that centers their experience. And so we do both. But I think there is a sadness or a heartbreak, and what that can do is paralyze us and make us just stay in this place of inaction and inefficacy. Queen of the off grid, I do save the date gift for my family. I do a save the date gift for my family, sisters, nieces, nephew's parents for the following year, then rent a big house in a special place, Yosemite, Tahoe, etc. No stuff. Interesting idea. I love that. Just a place to be together. Doreen says it's unconscionable that hungry children in America. It is. There is no reason. And Noreen, the lie that conservative politics and religion leverages all day long on Fox, on Capitol Hill, is that there's not enough for everyone. We can't do this, and we can't help Ukraine and we can't help Palestine because we have to help start right at home. And then at home, they're doing jack shit, right? And so it isn't that we don't have enough. We have enough food and we have enough opportunities. We have enough jobs. It's about having creativity and selflessness, and not being so, um not to clutch so tightly at everything we think we're gonna lose. So, yeah, there is no immigrant taking the job of a person who wouldn't do that job to begin with, and also, there's nothing solved by taking person who's part of a society, documented or not, and paying taxes and doing their work and raising kids and sending them to school. There is nothing gained by inflicting trauma on their lives. That is a straight up lie. And I think it's important that we declare that lie. And he says Elon Musk could fund Snap for generations. He could, but you know who else could? The government, because we've been fine up until this one monster gets into office, and suddenly his enablers and his co-conspirators and his Project 2025ers say, we're going to actually take away these things in the name of helping everyone. Again, no logic. There's no sense to it. Healthcare program, they don't have one. They're not going to have one. Yesterday it was, or the day before, it was alluded that, well, the plan is probably going to be just to give everybody their money back, and let them spend their money however. What that means is, if you're a low income person, you're out of luck. If you don't have healthcare through your job, you're not going to survive. And anyone who has experienced a medical emergency or an illness or an accident knows that that one thing can take away your life savings. So the idea that we're somehow going to empower people to take care of their health care is asinine. And we have to make sure that we declare that, because Elon Musk could do these things, Peter Thiel could do these things, but we can do these things, and we've been doing them. And now, for some reason, that's not possible. It's simply because the people running our government are sociopaths. So, Dan says, I volunteer at a year round bike giveaway and have done so for a long time. Awesome stuff, Dan, and a reminder that we're focused on the holidays. We're focused on the needs of marginalized people or the fractures and the traumas. Um, this is perennial. This is year-round stuff. And so the more we can make ourselves part of our local communities and participate in something, and here's the truth about this. We're talking about loneliness tonight, isolation, whether real, physical, or emotional. That is alleviated for people when we make them feel seen. Remember, visibility equals belonging. And so if you can show up week after week in something that's not flashy, not massive, as Dan said, it could be a bike. For some of you, it could be a local food pantry. It could be a resume, service. It's teaching ESL. All of these things, they're not going to trend on social media necessarily. They're not going to, make the news. They're gonna fundamentally alter the experiences of people that you come into contact with. So, there's something to be said for not succumbing to the pressure to do the big and dramatic and flashy, but it's about doing small, respectfully, consistently, I would say. So great. Timothy, the White House literally doesn't care, and it's sad. Timothy, it is sad, but you know what's more sad? So many people in his base don't care. That That grieves me, although I know that's also the opportunity because people who support him. I know people who support him. And as much as I want distance from them, as I talked about earlier, I would like them to I would like them to change, not because I want them to agree with me in theory. I want them to change because I want their hearts to be open to the experiences of other people. I want them to live with an open hand, not a closed fist. Um, it's better for them, but it's better for the people in their path. Um, Many of you have been raised in the church as I have, and the line from many conservative churches is, well, we don't want the government telling us what to do. We shouldn't have mandated charity. This should be out of what we choose. And as people of faith, but the people, how many thousands of churches are there in America? And they've been there for theoretically as long as America's been here, but even before that, there have been faith communities around since the time of Jesus, like 2,000 years, Jesus followers. And here in America, we've always had, and they are the lion's share of the faith communities in America. So why do we still have hunger? Why do we still have poverty? Why do we still have racial division? Or why do we have inequity and injustice and homophobia and nationalism? Because the people in those churches don't want to actually do the things that they say that they're rejecting the government for wanting them to do. They don't want to do it under compulsion, but they aren't doing it under spiritual conviction either, or we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have hunger. We wouldn't have poverty if the Christians did that. So um, that might inspire you to say, I need to get to know or engage some people of faith around me and figure out why they believe what they believe. Maybe you do need a story exchange with them. Dan says, why is it that 99% are like-minded? Dan, if you could clarify 99% are like-minded in what, or maybe what you're referring to. I don't want to answer without knowing exactly what you're referring to. Cran says, I can't go to DC for remove the regime, but I did just make a donation. Hope everyone else will support the ones going to DC this weekend. Cran, thanks for that opportunity. Friends, yes, I'm leaving on Friday morning to head up to Washington, DC for Remove the Regime. And it's going to be a gathering of thousands of people from all over the country converging on DC rather than just being spread around the country in something like No Kings. This is about us going to where the wannabe king sits and to say, we're not going to allow this and we want impeachment removal. And I was talking to someone the other day and saying, I wanna do this, it's gonna be great, but there's a frustration, I'm sure, with everyone that, "Is this even helpful?" But then this person said, "No, he is definitely on the ropes right now because you've got what's happening with the economy, what happened with the government shutdown, what what the Epstein files are exposing in him, his physical attrition, but his cognitive decline, and it's getting more and more difficult for people to find reasons to support him. Now they're going to try, but I think there is a groundswell and there is a critical mass. And looking at what's happening with ICE, all of these things pile them on top of another, and you have to ask yourself as a reasonable human being, what good is this regime? So I'm going to DC, and Friday night, I'm going to be part of something called Comedy Church, and stand-up comedians are going to talk about their faith. It's going to be really kind of a cool idea, and they're going to and I'm going to share a few things. And then Saturday is when the big event happens, and there's going to be fantastic music and comedians, and we're going to make it an enjoyable experience that highlights not just our we're against this thing, but here's the joy with which we live. So thanks, Gran. Richard says socialism equals take care of ourselves, everyone, with our own tax dollars. Do we not all deserve the same level of health care and security as our elected officials? Richard, yeah, I think, you know, socialism, Marxism, communism, they're things that the right uses, these taglines, these buzzwords to diffuse or to get around simply being a decent human being. And it's really as simple as that. Socialism is something, we are a democratic republic, but we operate with a lot of socialistic policies, and people enjoy those policies when it suits them. But when they need to oppose socialism for to support the narrative of other people's selfishness and what's being taken from them, then suddenly it's bad. We know this. Um, and yeah, it should outrage every Trump supporter that their elected officials have unlimited access to doctors and to care and to life-giving, life-saving stuff. Trump goes and gets a vaccine that he's really trying to make impossible for others to get. So yeah, for sure. Some great conversation happening in the chat. Sorry, I can't even keep up with it. It's so good. This is what the point is. We support one another. Um, Lolita says, "I like what you just said. I like living with an open hand and not a closed fist." Yeah, and sometimes, the closed fist is sometimes necessary. If you've read my writing, you know that I talk about my faith growing up and the idea of Jesus as the good shepherd. And if you grew up in the church, you've heard that image. Jesus calls himself the good shepherd. And we often focus on, that as sort of like a image of, I don't know, pastoral, and it's very quiet and serene. But for me, it's the dual meaning that Jesus is saying, I am shepherd to the sheep, to the people who are, he called harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. So he wasn't saying they were blind followers. He wasn't using the sheep in that context. He was saying these people are battered by the experience of being human and being denied decency or food by the powerful and the wealthy. Nothing has changed, right? But so Jesus says, I am the shepherd to them, caregiver for them. But to the wolves, to the ones that he saw as causing all that damage, he is a fierce and holy terror. He was public adversary. And so I think that's for people of faith, of the Christian faith, or just who aspire to the teachings of Jesus. There is some wisdom there to say, if I want to emulate the idea of the good shepherd, that means I'm caregiver and I'm a status quo changer. That I am, respecter and lover of individuals, but I fight to change the system as well. So really great stuff in here. I'm hopeful on the playback you're able to read these comments. I confess that I don't know if that's possible. I sure hope it is because there's just such good stuff here. Um, I read an article, Anna says, about a woman who called 50 plus churches saying she needed formula for her baby. The big mega churches couldn't help, said she needed to be on their list. The ones who helped was a Muslim mosque and a very poor small church. Um, Rubber's meeting the road. We're showing who we are right now, individually and collectively. And, we're getting ready to close tonight. We started off with the idea of loneliness and isolation and loss and the grief of the empty table. Um, so we want to attend to our own losses, but this is also um, we live in the mirror. Sometimes that's important to care for ourselves, but we live looking out the window too and seeing what is the world outside and what is needed there. And so my encouragement to you today is to think about loss and loneliness and the empty table and normal holiday wear and tear that people are going through, relational struggles. But now with all this stuff with SNAP benefits, with ICE, who are the people around you who are feeling profoundly unseen or hyper seen by predators? And how can you, in this case, think about right where you are, be an agent that removes that loss, that loneliness that fills the empty table or the empty pantry, if you will. So great conversation tonight. Really appreciate you all. A couple of notes. I want to make sure to tomorrow, we're going to meet at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern and 1 o'clock the following day. We'll have two midday conversations because I'm going to be on the road, heading to DC, and I'm going to stop wherever I am and we're going to chat. But really appreciate this community, all you're doing, the people you are, and hey, keep doing the good work you're doing. It matters. This world is far more compassionate than it would have been had you not shown up um, over time and today. So be well, and we'll see you soon. Peace out there, Substackers.